It's just heartbreaking to watch, especially when you're watching people throw away, millions of dollars into a project. But I guess at least most of those people have the means to recoup that money. Whereas I've seen other cases with, like smaller houses, remodel type projects where maybe people have sunk $100,000 into a remodel, and that's like all the money they have. It's all their savings. And so that means a lot more to them maybe than the people who dropped a couple million, but they're doing really well in life. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Lawson, and our guest today is no one. I've had guests on every episode that I've ever done, but I've decided to mix in a few episodes solo so that you can maybe hear a little about what's important to me and what's on my mind. And here lately, I've encountered this situation, so it's been kind of at the forefront of my thought, and that is a term that you may have heard of called the sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy is defined by Oxford Dictionary as a phenomenon whereby a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or a course of action because they've already invested heavily in it, even when it's clear that abandonment would be more beneficial to them. I think we've all done this, right? Like we've been watching a movie for half an hour and we realize, man, this movie really sucks. But we're just going to stick it out because we've already invested half an hour in it. Let's just go ahead and finish the movie, right? And people do this all the time with relationships, jobs. Maybe it's not fulfilling anymore or it's an abusive situation, but they're like, man, I've been in this for 15 years and I'm just going to stick it out. So trust me, this happens all the time with construction projects too. And in my consulting business, I've had several of these pop up over the last few years. And the stories almost always kind of start off the same way. People hire pretty much always the low bid builder because, he's way cheaper than everyone else. He told them what they wanted to hear. He can get this job done for this price. And then shockingly, the guy can't execute what he promised. I've related this story on a few episodes in the past, but I had one where a builder was on a project for I think about 2 years, and the house wasn't even through framing at that point. And when they first hired me as a consultant, I walked it, I looked at it, and the framing wasn't even good, and I said, "You should fire this guy." And the response was, "Well, I doubt we can find somebody else to do this cheap, and he's a really nice guy." And he promised us that he can do it, so we're just going to stick it out. Well, so they stuck it out, and guess what? Like a year later, a few $100,000 more down the hole, and the guy still can't get it done. So another case, almost the same situation. The guy grossly underbids the house, and this time it's a very, very complex modern house. In fact, I think I've told this story before on the podcast as well. Again, after over a year of framing's not even through. It's obvious that he doesn't have, the trades capable. He doesn't have the framer that knows what he's doing. He personally has never done a house like this, so he doesn't even have the knowledge to keep an eye on the framer. And so there's no world in which any amount of money is going to build that house with those trades with that builder. But unfortunately, that situation, they just stuck with the guy. The guy was a pretty smooth talker, and somehow he convinced them that he could build this house. They also convinced him that I was wrong, so they ended up firing me on the project as a consultant, and they let the builder keep working. So here a few weeks ago, I actually drove by that house, and guess what? 3 years into it rather. The house is still not even 3/4 complete. It looks like total crap. And I don't know that it's ever going to look good. So once again, they have this mentality of, we've given this guy so much money. We think that he can do it. It's too hard to find somebody else to finish it. So we're just going to write it out. And I think that also sometimes people just don't want to admit that they made a mistake. They They really, really want to believe that there's some world in which there's a guy that can actually deliver what they want, for a fraction of the cost of everyone else. I think we see this all the time with even buying a car. Like we think that we can get that car cheaper from someone else, and then by the time they add on all the extra fees and add-ons, guess what? It's the same price the other dealer was charging. But with homes, people have invested so much money in it. They've sunk so many hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars into it, that they really feel like they have to just hang on to that. And so they hang on so tightly that they just end up riding that ship all the way to the bottom. It's really sad. And it's not like these are dumb people either. So the first house that I mentioned, the guy is a petroleum engineer and his wife's a teacher. The second couple, the wife's an attorney and the guy owns a very large, very successful business. And I've got another story, actually one that Crafted ended up finishing the house, almost exact same situation. The guy is a college administrator and the wife is a doctor. So it's not like these are dumb, uneducated people making these decisions. It's just they believe that they made the right decision to begin with. Once it was proved to them that they made a wrong decision, they just have a hard time, either believing that and owning up to it, or they're like, God, I've sunk this much money into it. I just have to write it out. So I don't know. It's just heartbreaking to watch, especially when you're watching people throw away, millions of dollars into a project. But I guess at least most of those people have the means to recoup that money. Whereas I've seen other cases with, like smaller houses, remodel type projects where maybe people have sunk $100,000 into a remodel and that's like all the money they have. It's all their savings. And so that means a lot more to them maybe than the people who dropped a couple million, but they're doing really well in life. A lot of these people don't have the money to get an attorney involved. They don't have the money to hire a consultant to kind of back them up on this. So that's even more of a sad situation. So aside from just construction issues like this with sunk cost fallacy, the other way this plays out in my world is with work relationships, like when it comes to employees or subcontractor relationships. And I am absolutely guilty of this, maybe more than anybody else. And I'm sure my staff would smile and back me up on this. When it comes to employees, I hate firing people. I don't know anybody that really enjoys it, but for me, it just causes anxiety. And although I'm getting better at it after 25 years, it still hurts me every time to have to fire somebody. I think that I heard this phrase a few years back in a peer group that I was in, and the phrase was that hiring is guessing and firing is knowing. I think it's often an ego thing that people don't want to admit. I don't like to admit that I screwed up, that I hired the wrong person, and it feels like you're kind of admitting that you made a mistake. You're admitting that you made a bad hire when you fire somebody or let somebody go. Same thing with letting a builder go. You're basically admitting that you made a mistake by hiring that person. But yeah, it's really painful as a business owner when that situation comes up and having to fire that person and basically admit that I was wrong. But, there's only so much information that you can get during a job interview. Even if you check backgrounds, references, all that kind of stuff, it's really easy to fake those things. So even somebody who's experienced in staffing issues is really just making an educated guess at knowing if that person's going to work out or if that person's able to kind of fit within their systems at their company. It's kind of the same thing with subcontractors. We shop for subcontractors on a regular basis. We try to vet them. They might be driving a nice company truck and have a nice business card, kind of a good reference list. Of course, no one's going to give you a bad reference list, right? But until you've actually done business with these people, you just don't know. And so back to sunk cost related to this, I've seen builders do this. And again, I've done it too. You're like, well, I've used Joe for 5 years to do this for me. And even though he's been screwing up, I just have a lot of time invested in him working with us and teaching him our systems. maybe my project managers think he's a nice guy, and it's just going to be so hard to find another whatever plumber, electrician, drywall guy. It's going to be too hard to find another guy to replace Joe, And so before you know it, you've talked yourself into keeping Joe around, even though he's really not capable of executing the kind of work that you need, or he's just not capable of kind of working within your systems and the way your company operates. And you find yourself, making excuses for him, or, kind of working around his deficiencies. So, in fact, that's a whole other episode that I'm going to do, and that's builders having the trades who are capable of executing the kinds of projects that they need to have, on their team. So, anyway, we're going to keep this one short. All these little solo episodes I've had little ideas for, we're going to keep short. But as these things come to my mind, like the sunk cost fallacy, I just want to sit down here in the studio and do a recording. So I think I've kind of rambled on about the sunk cost fallacy enough. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have a suggestion for something that you like for me to riff on a little bit, I would love to do it. So send us an email. You can drop us a DM on, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you saw this, or on our YouTube channel, or send us an email at podcast@yourprojectshepherd.com. I'd love to connect with you and talk to you about some ideas for episodes. So that's it for today. I appreciate you joining me, and I hope you come back and check out next week's episode. Take care.